All right, everybody. Thank you all for attending today. Today's webinar is going to be the basics of Cisco CDR. My name is Victor Verba, and I'm a systems engineer over here at Variphy. And today I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. So today we're joined by Matt Sykes, aka Matty Ice, over here at Variphy. He's another systems engineer here. And for today's webinar, we're going to cover the basics of Cisco CDR and how to interpret some of the most basic fields within your Cisco data. We're going to go ahead and get started off with a quick overview of our company and what we do. We're going to go ahead and jump live right into a demo where Matt is going to go ahead and guide you through just looking at some of the Cisco CDR and how to interpret some of the basic fields. We're going to pause for some Q&A, answer some of your questions. So if you do have any questions during the demo, please make sure that you ask them in the Q&A panel on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Again, that's not the standard chat panel. There should be a Q&A panel on the bottom right. Be sure to ask any questions that you have over there. Then after Q&A, of course, we're going to go ahead and, as we do every Wednesday during our webinars, we'll reward one lucky attendee with a $50 Amazon gift card. So make sure you hang around to the end and see if you've won. So a quick overview of Variphy. Variphy is the preferred analytics solution and management solution for Cisco Collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR reporting, call analytics, customizable dashboards, UCCX, real-time wallboard reporting, remote phone control, macros broadcast, change management, as-built, DN, DID, as well as dial plan management. So we've got quite a few solutions out there, but the purpose of today's session is we're going to go ahead and focus strictly on the call analytics portion and really as it relates to Cisco CDR. One last thing before we go ahead and get started. Variphy does now offer enhanced consulting services, our NECS, our Ninja Enhanced Consulting Services. So basically, one of Variphy's SE's team members will be engaged on a one-on-one basis, remotely providing additional consulting services that you may need. That's unassisted reporting, dashboard configuration, system monitoring assistance. This basic service provides a dedicated SE to you. So we do all the heavy lifting, take all of that legwork out of your system. If somebody needs a report, they contact us. We go create that report, work with them directly. So if you want any additional information, please feel free to contact your account manager or an SE that you've already been working with, and we'd be more than happy to go in depth on what we do for our consulting services. So with all that said, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball over to you, Matty Ice, and let's go ahead and get the ball rolling here.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Victor.
You bet. There we go. And you, my friend, are now the presenter.
Fantastic. Okay. Let me just present the proper screen, and let's drag that fun WebEx toolbar out of the way. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Matt Sykes with Variphy. Welcome to this week's 30-minute webinar. Today we'll be focusing on the basics of Cisco CDR. I hope everyone is as excited as I am to present this, to listen to. Okay, so we're going to start out briefly with just a quick overview. We're looking at a nice, pretty graphical, colorized dashboard that I use for a lot of my presentations. But the reason I want to start here is from a very high level. I do want to state that everything that you see here within this dashboard is driven and derived from Cisco CDR, with an addition, with maybe a caveat or two with regards to some of the actual querying metadata like department names or end user IDs. We can see them again, end user IDs, et cetera, as well as agent ID breakdowns, et cetera. So all of this information, as lovely as it looks and as organized as it looks, it's all driven from Cisco CDR. So I think we've all unfortunately had the level of access to the Cisco CAR tool, if you will, which kind of ad hoc kind of searching for your CDR fields or maybe a quick ad hoc search for something. Very cumbersome to say the least. I did have one open. I guess I must have lost it, but just to show you real briefly, I think I have one right here. Let's pull this right over. So this is exactly what one of the view access in the Cisco CAR tool would look like. It doesn't really look that attractive here. I mean, there are well over 100 fields in the Cisco CDR, and having to parse through this, cumbersome just to say the least. So no one really wants to look at this. Even if you export with the CAR tool, the CDR the CDR data dumps and then throw them into an Excel spreadsheet. And you can use sorts, filters, and other mechanisms to garner that information that maybe a manager or an executive entity may want to see at a moment's notice. That is a little cumbersome to actually put in all that legwork. I've definitely worked with people before that love Variphy because it takes all of that work out of their hands and we do it behind the scenes for them. So all of this information, as I was showcasing on the dashboard, is driven from Cisco CDR. So the lovely thing with Variphy is, once again, you do not need to export that and throw that in any sheets and manipulate it at all. We utilize our analytics tool, and we recommend, obviously, our analytics tool here, our Adhoc History Search, to even pull back all of this information for us. So before we can look at this nice clean layout of it, let's jump into the dirty. Let's jump into some dirty Cisco raw data. Here we are. Okay, this is a very inflated, let's say 10 meg file here that I use from one of our lab UCMs, but we'll use this as a kind of our basic tutorial here that we're going to utilize for today. Now, once again, there's well over 100 detail columns that are in this file. I can pull all the way over, you can get all the way to DS, and I actually think in today's CDR on 12.5 or greater, I think I want to say it's all the way to DY. So Cisco is always baking in new CDR fields that can be utilized. We do utilize a majority of them. However, we don't use all of them because all of them really aren't that pertinent for maybe the end user reporting need, let's say. But obviously, the Cisco CDR can be a little overwhelming when you throw one of these data dumps into a sheet or into a spreadsheet with an Excel, and then you're kind of mocking it up and kind of looking at it. First things first, you're probably just staring at it for about 5-10 seconds while you try to interpret exactly what is all this mess. So I've kind of broken this down a little bit for today's presentation, and we're going to focus on a couple of my kind of color-coded columns here. So let's start out with the yellows. Now, I want to start with these kind of as basic kind of entities that these data fields are. So let's just start with the very easiest one. So calling party number. What is calling party number? Well, calling party number is the originator of the call, the person or the entity that picked up the phone, placed an outbound digit or an internal call to another colleague or coworker, or it could be inbound traffic. Different sides of the direction for both sides of the table, I like to say. You'll hear me repeating that a few times today. But very easily, this is who placed the call. This is who picked up the call and made the call. Pretty simplistic there. We can see that these are of 10-digit varieties. So this kind of just tells me at a quick glance that this is probably an external number that's dialing into my environment. And obviously, we kind of comb down the list here. I see a 4-digit DN here, and I actually see a Unicode login ID embedded with it as well within the CDR. So this kind of probably tells me that this is probably an internal agent making an outbound internal call or an outbound long distance or international call. So very easily, column I, it's the originator. But now other pieces come with column I because it is the quote unquote the originating side of the call. So there's other pieces that go with it, and we'll stick with the yellows for a minute or two. And these are the cause codes. We'll circle back to that. So with that calling party number, these also work in conjunction with it as well, the original and final called party numbers. But I'm going to slide back to that in 1 second because I just want to show the devices. Here they are. So that calling party number, that actually ties into, because it is the originator of the call. It is the person that's picking up the phone, placing that call. So it is the originator. This column here, BE, the originating device name, goes hand in hand with column I there. So those external 10-digit numbers that we saw were inbound of some variety, but they were coming in over this .110.1 trunk. So we can definitely see the originating device that those calls came in over, or what device, potentially maybe I'm certain this is an internal entity, this internal agent, this was his Mac that he made the originating phone call from. So I'm sure if I slide all the way back over to column I, we will see probably a 4-digit entity. We'll keep going. See, it's wide. It's a lot of data in here. Yeah, here we go. So here's my internal DN. This Lucas Giolito, he actually placed that outbound call on that SEP Mac. Let me slide faster. And we can see that it went out. Okay, so the terminating device on this, then the destination device name. So this is pretty much what we translate is to the terminating device name. So we can tell that Lucas on his SEP Mac for 50 seconds made an outbound call that went out over this UCX SIP route. But also BF here, this destination, or what we consider terminating device name, this also works in conjunction with the final called party number in AE. So I want to circle back to these because these are some of the basic other DN fields that we're going to see within normal call legs. So for instance, I definitely know that external callers that call inbound to the environment, the original called party number field denotes where the call was presented to first. So whether or not it's a direct DN to an agent, where it's a DID ringing directly to an internal DN, if it is that is it routed then over somewhere else. So this is where original called party number, or OCPN as I call it sometimes, this is where the call was presented to first. Now, on inbound traffic, it doesn't necessarily mean that's where it's going to end up finally. So the final called party number could be Unity, it could be someone's remote cell phone number, it could be an auto forwarded DN, it could be a variety of other options. But once again, original called party and final called party number on inbound traffic may or may not match, may not be one-to-one. That comes down to routing and translations. Now, if an internal entity like this Lucas person here, he answered this call. So he answered this call, and if I were to cycle over to column BD and get the duration, I could say for how long. But we can see here that if the original and final called party number fields are the same, we know that this was handled by an internal agent. Now, on the flip side of the table, as far as directions are concerned, so an outbound placed call. So if I grab this one down here, original called party number, I see an outside line access code of an 8, 1, and then the 10 digits. But if I slide over to column I see, okay, here's the same agent, but on a different DN. Okay, so this person on 7573 is simply placing, he's calling party number, the originator of the call, calls over, he's actually calling, pardon me, flew right past it, calling this 609 area code number. So on external outbound placed calls, the original and final called party numbers will always match. They will be one for one, because obviously once the phone call leaves call manager, once the call leg, if you will, or the call tree leaves call manager, it is being then translated or manipulated by the provider or at the PSTN level, and the call manager loses access to it. So, but of course, these will match. So that is pretty simplistic as far as kind of just understanding kind of the directions of how the Cisco CDR is working. How do you identify, is this an inbound call? Is this an outbound call? Is this an internal call? A few different ways we can do that as well. But as far as but at the basic rudimentary level, this is pretty much the main three fields that we're going to be looking at for DN captures, as far as original, placed, and received. But also we can also get into other maybe redirect DNs down the line. But also what we bake in here as well are going to be cause codes. So I have these highlighted in yellow as well, because these are codes. These are just numbers. You don't necessarily know just by gleaning at this data real briefly what exactly this means. Now, this is a destination cause code value. There's also an originating. So the destination cause code value is going to tie into the final called party number and or device, whereas the originating cause value, which I should have somewhere here, there we are, as well, these will be tied to the calling party number. So the calling party number, aka the originating party of the call, also gets tagged with an originating device name as well as originating cause code value. So once again, we see these codes here, but we're not going to ask you to kind of look these up. I mean, most certainly, if you wanted to, to browse over to some Cisco documentation and look up these cause codes and utilize lookups and put name labels on them, most certainly you can if you like. But once again, the beauty of Variphy is we do it for you. So we're actually going to translate those for you real time during an Axel query, and I'll just kind of give a quick example here. What those guys are: originating and terminating cause codes. Notice you don't see any numbers or numeric codes within here. We're translating that for you to give you the English translation of that code. Certainly, like I said, no, I don't think anybody really wants to throw this into a spreadsheet and utilize lookups and then to bake in translation values here for this. So definitely, beautiful piece of Variphy. Is very easy to look these up. So that covers, I suppose, just some of the more basic kind of rudimentary kind of the DN fields that I did want to mention. But there's also a lot more information as well. So let's just scroll on down. Now, I was mentioning codes. Now, we're not going to get too deep in this, but we're going to come back to some of those. But these guys here. So on behalf of codes. So there is a myriad of different field options within the CDR set that have on behalf of codes, whether or not they're originating, destinating, joining, last redirect. Once again, these are all codes. We're not asking anybody to translate these. We do them actually for you. And I do believe I have an example in a report over here. Yes, I've got a handful of on behalf of codes right here, and we're actually giving you the translation for it, whether it's a refer, whether it's, unfortunately, maybe it may be unknown, whether it's a deflection, things like that. So we can certainly garner that information very easily, not make anybody have to sift through any of this stuff whatsoever. It's on the ready, if you will, in our ad hoc history search, which we will bounce back and forth to in a few moments as well. I do want to mention, as I'm kind of going through this, yes, there's a lot of fields in here, and even within Verify, we utilize a majority of them. So real briefly, in my ad hoc search is where I'm at in Call Analytics, the history search. We can pretty much search anything that we want and don't need any spreadsheets, and we can key off of all the pertinent Cisco fields within the CDR that we need to. Obviously, out of the box, we come with this, a default search criteria. But what we have is, I'm going to show you another variance of in a second. We've got the kitchen sink as far as search criteria that we can query at a moment's notice. So that's that drop down there. So we can definitely have multiple search criteria based off of what's being driven for and derived from raw Cisco CDR that we're taking from, a process database, process SQL database, and then probably Axel querying some other information for the reports. But what I'm doing right now is in the ad hoc search, I'm just going to give you a quick little show of the show hide columns. Now, I have a lot of, I've got maybe 20 or so columns in my ad hoc search in the background, got a lot of good information. But we have, once again, I'm going to say, we have the kitchen sink over here on the left at your disposal. So we have, with subgrouping categories for, originating party, dialed party, terminating party, but then also we can utilize combinations of these within our search sets as well. And I do want to denote where you do see in the product or column labels of a capitalized CUCM. This actually denotes this is metadata that's not native in the Cisco CDR. So we don't have end user departments, end user managers, custom attributes based off of the end users. All this information is actually Axel queried by Verify from the UCM and married live with the CDR from the database and pushed forward either to dashboard widgets and or reports for requested needs, we'll say. So definitely a lot of reach for the Verify application when it comes to the Cisco CDR. Let's just state that. And I do know that out of all those columns, some of the terminology may be confusing, and you may not want to reference back to look for Cisco documentation on that. We actually do provide a data dictionary for the Cisco CDR fields within our knowledge base. You can visit verify.com or kb.verify.com and log into our site and see all these available search types that we have for the CDR at our disposal with a description as well. So there's no guesswork in that. So we're not going to have a lot of fields within the lookups within the application that we don't have any descriptions or definitions for you. So we definitely have all of that. And then kind of broken down as we saw it in the application based off of some subgroupings like originating party, dialed, terminating, but then we'll also do combinations of originating or dialed, originating or terminating, dialed or terminating, et cetera, et cetera. And then one of my favorites actually has all three of these guys together. So this is actually the calling party number, original and or final called party number. That's definitely a very good, useful combo field that I use all the time within the ad hoc searches. But definitely, please do know that we have this data dictionary and is very easily able to pull down and review, as well as, I'll mention this one as well since I'm talking KBs, we do also have a KB right next door to it as well, to also give you definitions and explanations with regards to our scenario guides, or our scenario types, the totals, abandons, abandon off hook, transfers, consultatives, et cetera, et cetera. We are listing out all the terminations and the descriptions for those scenario types here as well. Definitely a lot of information on the Verify website in the KBs for all that information. So, okay, so now back to the CDR, as everyone's all excited about. Okay, so let me slide back to the beginning of this lovely file here. Okay, let's look at date time origination. Okay, so this is epoch time we get from the call manager, and I don't think anybody really wants to throw those into any epoch converters, but obviously you most certainly could. Obviously, it's upticking since January 1st of 1970, but the application does that for you. And now the reason I have that highlighted is because there are a few others I do want to denote. So there is the date time origination, but there's also a date time connect and disconnect. Where are my greens? Here they are. Okay, so once again, more numerics, and we're not asking anybody to look these up, but there is pertinent information that the application does use for these. So for instance, maybe we'll talk about ring time. How do we derive ring time? Well, ring time is is a little arithmetic that we utilize off of date time origination and date time connect. We take the difference there, and that is actually going to be the ring time. Now, there's other pieces that do play into some of these, and I will get to them in a moment, but definitely a couple good, very high-level timing columns that we have here. Okay, I am going to segue real briefly over to Payload to the Grave reporting. Now, definitely, if you've been on any of our webinars or worked with any of our support SEs, you'll definitely have seen probably a quick little showcase or a use of the Cradle to Grave option. And the reason I bring that up is because normally when we're kind of going through and kind of building or turning on the Cradle to Grave option, we turn on the top toggle and let's go ahead and run it and kind of just go away, and we don't ever really kind of talk about these kind of fields right here. And I can blame myself. I certainly don't myself, but I do want to explain them here for us. What we do by turning on the Cradle to Grave options is we're utilizing global call IDs, originating and terminating call leg IDs. Well, where do we get those? Aha, you guessed it, Cisco CDR. That's where we got it from. So once again, just do a little stare and compare. We got global call ID, originating and terminating call leg IDs. Well, where are they? All right, there's global call ID right there. Hey, and there's the originating call leg ID. So we definitely have those. And if I slide on down just a little bit, looking for purple, there's the destination or terminating leg identifier. So we're utilizing those to go ahead and build the C2G sequences within the report requests. And here's a quick example of one. I have a little C2G going on in here. Oh, this is okay. This is an export that I ran earlier. A lot of detail columns in here, as we can see, but the reason I'm turning this on, if I can find it, there we are. Okay, so what I turned this on for is because, once again, I do have them baked in. Here we are. The global call ID, the originating and terminating leg identifiers. This is actually how Variphy is able to actually package these and put these together in sequences further down the report for, maybe a little more investigative analysis that may be needed there. But certainly, this is actually how we extrapolate those and package them together for these sequences. So we are keying off of specific fields in the call manager UCM data to provide us those sequences, which is very timely and very helpful when we're trying to identify maybe some routing mishaps or some configuration woes, if you will, but definitely some great information there. Now, how do we identify abandoned call legs? Who said that? I'm glad you asked that. That is a good question. How do we identify abandoned calls? Now, I'm going to lean back on these green guys, these date-time originations. So what we utilize for abandonment, where are they? Here we go. So we have date-time origination, date-time connect, and date-time disconnect. Now on abandoned calls, maybe I don't have too many here, but on an abandoned call, we actually will not have, this field will be blank. There will be no date-time connect. So we can provide ring time for that abandoned call. However, this field will be blank, denoting that it was abandoned and that it was not presented to, or it was not successfully connected to an entity within the environment. So this field would be blank, and we would use a little arithmetic from the date-time origination, the date-time disconnect, just to provide you what that abandoned ring time was. Obviously, there will be no positive duration, column BD. Let me fly over there. There will be no duration, actually, of positive call duration, but there will be ring time that we can derive from these date-time origination fields that we see in green. That is definitely a good one, and I could probably even pull up a sample report. There we go. There's one C2G section here as well. I do have these kind of guys baked in, the date-time origination, connect, and termination. So one right here, we don't actually have a connection here. This is blank, like I was mentioning. So we can derive some ring time. The difference between the date-time origination and termination is 120 seconds. We know that there was no connect time, so it was a zero duration or a not connected / abandoned call type. That is actually how we derive that abandonment. Just at a very quick high level there. Okay, so what else do I have here for us? So I do think we want to look at the end user association as well. Now, how we utilize the end users. We definitely utilize the Unicode login IDs, but also we're axle querying the call manager to pull back that metadata information as well. So like I had said earlier, all these fields that have the capital CUCM within them, they're not embedded within the raw CDR at all. We axle query that from call manager and marry it to this data. So for instance, what do I have here? Slide over to a tad. Okay, on my terminating, this is mainly my inbound hunt agents here that I'm kind of keying off of. But we see here the terminating device, CUCM end user ID, CUCM end user department. This information isn't native to the CDR. And the lovely thing about Variphy is we don't have to worry about supporting any type of end user directory within our application. We're axle querying call manager live and pulling that data back at a moment's notice, marrying it right to the data within the SQL DB. So that's how we're able to bake in, end user ID, device protocols, device descriptions, and the list goes on and on. Device locations, middle names, manager names, custom attributes, all that good stuff. And even the custom attributes can actually even be baked in or fed in to Call Manager from an Active Directory sync that's probably ran on some type of frequency. So we pull that information very easily and can pull that to the forefront, whether it's something as simple as an ad hoc search, whether or not we need to go ahead and cultivate some dashboard widgets to go ahead and bake that information in there. We can certainly do that. But we do have a couple options at our disposal how we do associate the end users. So for instance, out of the box, we do utilize a cluster setting configuration. Normally it defaults to the control device. And I'll just show you real briefly here. But we can do this cluster-wide, but also we can override this at the report level. So at the moment, right here within my cluster settings, the end user association setting is set for LDAP telephone numbers, but it could be control device names. So each system is different. Cluster X to cluster Y can be using completely different end user associations altogether. But this is at the cluster level. If I wanted to, maybe I want to run a quick report. I love that cluster. If I wanted to run a quick report, I'm going to, let's say, export the results. Within the ad hoc search within analytics, you do get the same report methodology options at your disposal so that you can go ahead and run a report from the ad hoc as well. You don't necessarily need to build it from the ground up in the reports, but you certainly could. But the end user association within the report or an export from the ad hoc, we can use, by default, it does use the cluster setting, which is the LDAP. But if I wanted to, I could override that very easily for this report. So we can certainly do that, or a widget. They will default to use the cluster setting, but once again, each report, you could report and or widget, you could override that end user association if you wanted to. So you can certainly do that. And I do know, and I will make mention of this. Yes, there are a lot of Cisco fields here. The terminology maybe is not so agreeable to everyone, let's say. Obviously, it can't be everything to everyone. What we do have on the roadmap, though, is going to be custom labels. We're going to be able to produce our own labels that you can actually solidify within Variphy on these CDR fields altogether. So for instance, if you didn't want to have this maybe be called calling party number as a lookup within your search sets, we could call it something like originator of call or whatever may be significant for you to identify that from the application. So as of right now, correct, we are using the Cisco terminology for our data columns, but we will have, and this is a little sneak peek, we will have the availability in our 12.2 version due out at the end of September to go ahead and override these and use custom labels. So if we want to change the calling party number to be from extension, if we want to change any of these fields, we can turn them on, turn them off. We can have multiple sets of these. I'm not going to go that far into it, but do know that the custom labels are just around the corner. So this should certainly make things a little easier to identify some of those basic Cisco CDR kind of fields and kind of how to utilize those within search sets to go ahead and cultivate exactly what you're looking for from a report and or dashboard widget user request. I want to thank everyone for joining today. I do believe that is the amount of content I feel like covering today on this humongous 100+ data field CDR file. But thank you so much for joining. Victor, I'm going to pass it back over to you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Matt. We have quite a few questions today. I don't think we're going to be able to get to everybody, but please feel free to contact us at support@variphy.com. If we're not able to get to your questions or you have additional questions, if you're not an existing customer, please feel free to contact us at support@variphy.com as well, or just reach out to your AM, and I'm sure we'll get back to you. A couple questions I do want to answer. We had a question that came in from Derek. He asked, you were showing the cradle to grave. Does cradle to grave, can it show calls going into or out of my call center? So that was a pretty good question. I want to make sure we can address.
Yes, definitely. Good question here. And I think I have or had a report. Here we go. Let me take a quick peek. Let's type CCX in the sample report I have here. Earlier. Let me take.
Yeah, you know what? You had CXX in there instead of CCX.
Thank you. Been a long day. Okay. Yeah, great question, Brandon. Yeah, and certainly within our C2G sequences, let me punch this up for us. I don't think everybody can see this. I can barely see this. 125 should be good. Okay. So within our C2G sequences, and I lost it. Where did you go? That was not the time. Here we go. Okay. So very easily here on the C2G sequence, correct. Yeah, we definitely see calls that transfer into or get routed into contact center. So for instance, on this sequence here, we can see this external number dials into over a SIP trunk. It's a looks like a Unity call handler. From the Unity call handler, they are forwarded. They're forwarded over to contact center. We can see the CCX trigger here. We see the CCX port, and obviously the terminating device name that we get from the UCM CDR. And we see then the agent that actually picked up. So this is the CCX agent actually in the rentals department that actually on this Mac picked up this call. Looks like they spoke with this external party for about 20 seconds or so, and then it looks like they transferred them down into my hunt group. So yes, we can certainly see calls that go into and out of CCX, but obviously if we were looking for reporting or routing, if you will, within contact center, we would need to utilize our contact center reporting, our CCX analytics reporting. So great question, but yes, we definitely see calls to and fro CCX out of UCM.
Great, excellent. And hey guys, in the interest of time, Matt, hey, awesome job, buddy. Great content there. So let's go ahead and I'm going to steal the ball back here. I know everybody's got things to do. So let me go ahead and steal the ball back, and we're going to go ahead and share out my screen. Again, awesome job, Matt. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the winner of our session. Again, any questions you have that went unanswered, feel free to reach out to us, support@variphy.com, or reach out to your account manager. And the winner of today's webinar is, congratulations, Heath Baskin. We'll go ahead and we'll have your account manager reach out to you and see how we can go ahead and get you that $50 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. And I want to thank everybody for attending today. We do webinars. They're live webinars every single Wednesday. Please feel free to sign up for any of our webinars. Our next one is how to use change management and how to use Variphy's audit tools to just quickly troubleshoot changes within your environment, within your call manager. And again, thank you all for your time today. Awesome job, Matt, and I look forward to seeing everybody on our future webinars. Thanks all.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye.